and Uncle Teddy has a tip right after 3. Hamul Casino is the most fun place to ring in 2025. At noon on New Year's Eve, get $20 in free play just by playing with your Sweetwater card. Then stick around for a special New Year's Eve buffet and live music. Hamul Casino, fun above all else.
Previously on Jon and Jim.
Are the Padres still involved in this sweepstake? Remember what Mike Schultz said at the winter meetings, which is like, we expect to land them. So you kind of start the offseason from that point. And then AJ Preller talked about their interest and desires to land Sasaki. But here we are, past Christmas. He can sign as soon as January 15th. And he's met with 5 teams. And none of those 5 teams are either the Padres or the Dodgers.
Now, time for Jon and Jim.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? This is hour 1 of Jon and Jim. Jim will be back on Monday. He is still out east in either North Carolina or South Carolina or the Carolinas or, for all we know, the Dakotas. But Jim will be back supposedly
He's in
on
Virginia.
Monday. He's probably in, like, Modesto. But Jim will be back on
ironic
Monday.
If he's in Norfolk State.
Yeah, who knows where he is. But Jim's going to be back supposedly on Monday. We're with you for the next 4 hours, and we have a good show lined up for you. Matt Park is the voice of the Syracuse Orange, and they're in town for the Holiday Bowl coming up in a couple of hours. So Matt Park will join us at 2:30. The Mesa Foundation, in concert collectively with San Diego State men's basketball, made a really cool announcement today. Maybe an unprecedented announcement, because San Diego State's men's basketball team is donating a portion of their NIL to Feeding San Diego. Everyone on the team has made a donation, which is really unique and really inspiring and very cool. And Jeff Smith, who is the founder of the Mesa Foundation, will join us coming up at 3:30 p.m. Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network, gets ready for another busy weekend in the NFL, second to last regular season week in the National Football League. Cynthia swings by, as always, courtesy of Hamul at 4 p.m. Then Bernie Wilson, if you missed him earlier this week, we'll share our conversation with Bernie on the life and legacy of Ricky Henderson coming up at 5 p.m. But there's more to the story on Roki Sasaki, because when we were signing off yesterday, we were, I think, maybe reading an article that was written by Jon Heyman, or just briefly touched on something that Jon Heyman wrote late yesterday, last night, essentially, in the New York Post. And this had to do with the fact that both the Dodgers and the Padres, according to Heyman, remain the favorites to land this Japanese superstar, Roki Sasaki, right? He writes the Dodgers established themselves as the team, but Sasaki's admiration of Padres ace Yu Darvish also gives them a shot. But he goes on to write this, that the Padres might be more apt to trade Dylan Cease if they land Roki Sasaki. So I want to hear from Padres fans regarding that specific fact. The fact that if they were to land Sasaki, would that make them more inclined to move Dylan Cease? I think you could make an argument that if you actually do end up with Sasaki, at that point, why not just go all in on 2025? Okay, you're not going to have Cease in 2026. He's going to make too much money. Yeah, I understand you can get something back for him if you trade him prior to 2025 as a marquee pitcher, right? Top 5 in Cy Young multiple times in his prime, would command a really good return, potentially. But if you're truly trying to win a World Series, if you're trying to get over a hump, if you're trying to take down the mighty Dodgers, wouldn't it make more sense if you landed Sasaki to hold on to Dylan Cease? So that's basic. And here's the other thing. If you could have either Cease or Sasaki for 2025, wouldn't it start with Cease? I mean, Cease is the seasoned veteran pitcher that's been through the battles. I know he struggled in the postseason a year ago, and he has struggled in his career in the postseason as well. But if I could have just one pitcher for the upcoming year, I'm going to take the veteran Dylan Cease over Roki Sasaki. What's so appealing to me about Roki Sasaki is you don't have him for 1 year, and you don't have him for 2 or 3 or 4. You may have him for 5 or 6 a year, or even more than that. And you're also getting him at a bargain discount rate of something like $1 million a year. So the Sasaki thing is intriguing in the now, although he's only 23 years of age. I don't think most are expecting Roki Sasaki from day one to be a frontline starting pitcher in the major leagues that is capable of leading a team to the promised land. You'd like to hope that that's a possibility. Maybe he plays a role in that for whatever team he lands on, and hopefully it's the Padres. But with Sasaki, it's both the now, what he does as a 23-year-old, but it's also the future. What does he do for you in 2025, 2026, and beyond? But you look at this rotation, if you land Sasaki, it's not like you have this embarrassment of riches. You don't have Joe Musgrove. And you have an aging Yu Darvish, and you would have, without Musgrove, you would have Michael King, and you would have Darvish, and you would potentially have Cease, and you would have Sasaki. You'd still be looking to fill that fifth spot in your rotation. You could argue they still have work to do with the rotation, although they would have internal candidates for one spot. You'd much prefer internal candidates for one spot, the Waldrons, the Vasquezes, the Burritos, whomever else emerges, as opposed to two spots. Like two spots, you're asking too much. But if you went into the year and you had Sasaki, I know it's an if, but if you had Sasaki, Cease, Darvish, and King, that's a starting point that allows you to vie potentially in both the regular season and the postseason. I don't think it makes you the favorite. You're not all of a sudden better than the LA Dodgers, but starting pitching in a short series at least gives you a shot. And we've seen that play out over the last handful of years, just in general in baseball. Padres over the Dodgers in 2022, Diamondbacks over the Dodgers in 2023. And in 2024, truthfully, Padres had the better rotation. They just didn't win the series. That's a credit to the Dodgers. Bullpen day, game 4, Yamamoto in game 5, and the Padres' bats were just completely lifeless in the final 2+ games of that series. But, I would make the argument that if you are so fortunate enough to land Roki Sasaki, and again, it's an if, and according to Jon Heyman, who's written a lot on this, it's still the Dodgers as the front runner, followed by the Padres, but he writes that it's not a formality. It's nowhere near 100%. I think he has a quote from a source or an insider saying it's probably better than 50-50, according to the source, that he ends up with the Dodgers. But that's not 90% or 99%. And who knows at the end of the day if it is going to be the Dodgers or the Padres, or are there going to be other teams that emerge? Will there be a mystery team? But shoot, if you win the jackpot and land Roki Sasaki, at that point, aren't you more inclined to get the band back together, so to speak, and do everything in your power to try to win 90+ games and put yourself in a position where you get into the postseason and you have a legitimate rotation that can help you win series? That's how I would look at it.
It depends. Do we still have a whole bunch of holes elsewhere to fill that we don't have money to fill them, to where, we could trade Cease and, fill all of those holes and, maybe put a player or two still in our farm system, something like that, then I would still be open to it. I don't know if you have both of them. I get what you're saying about how you could just go in, but you don't need both of them, I guess would be. You could almost say that they would cancel each other out, to where then you could just use, we talked yesterday about how the difference between this year and last year's offseason is they don't have that Juan Soto type, trade chip just sitting in their pocket that they can cash in. If they get Roki, then they would at least have the Dylan Cease trade chip that they could cash in to fill other holes on the team. That's my only depend.
It is true that they have real, legitimate questions regarding portions of the roster that go beyond the rotation. Absolutely. Would they need to still address left field? Yes. Is catcher still a question mark because you have Luis Campusano? And even if he's at his best, whatever that looks like, if he's healthy, you're still going to need a second catcher because Campusano is not starting more than 90-something games, you wouldn't think, for the Padres in 2025, even if he is healthy and really, really good this upcoming season. And then, of course, I'm sure there are a question mark to address on your bench, and there's question marks potentially at the back of your bullpen, although I think they're pretty well shored up with their bullpen. But a year ago, you went out and got a left fielder for $1 million. Now, that worked out swimmingly and perfectly, and I'm not saying that they can necessarily replicate that. But to me, Cease has more value than replacing him with some players at the upper levels of your farm system, and even an everyday regular that's a position player. Because Dylan Cease can make 30+ starts for you and could start a game 1 or a game 5 or a game 7 or whatever, and you would feel relatively good about it. Now, I understand he's coming off a postseason that was less than desirable, and the way he pitched in game 4 was basically an abject failure, but they put him in that position, and he was throwing on 3 days rest. But, I don't think anyone should expect that Roki Sasaki gets here March 27th of 2025 and he's your opening day starter, or he's pitching a game 1 of a postseason or a game 5 or a game 7, a decisive game of a postseason. I mean, if that happens, that's amazing. But here's a guy that pitches on 5 days rest, not 4 days rest in Japan. I think he's never thrown more than 130 innings in any one season overseas. So, like, you got to at least be reasonable, I would say, with Sasaki. Maybe the expectation would be, he makes 25 starts, not 30, if he stays healthy, and he throws 145 innings, not 175 innings. But, like, you get to the postseason, and if Roki Sasaki puts together a good year as a 23-year-old, you still have Michael King in this theoretical. You still have King, Cease, Darvish, and I'm leaning heavily on those three. I'm leaning on Roki Sasaki as well. Like, if you're going to win a World Series or make a run or get to a 7-game series, like a championship series, you're going to need 4 starters. And you could argue you'll need more than that as well in your bullpen. So you're going to need 4 starters, and maybe Sasaki emerges as like a number 3. And all of a sudden that pushes someone like, I don't know, Yu Darvish back to a number 4. But that's all wishful and hopeful. But like we've said so many times over the years with the Padres, that often what gets teams in trouble in October is they eventually run out of starting pitching. Now, to the Dodgers' credit last year, that didn't do them in. I mean, they went into the postseason with like 2.5 starting pitchers, and they somehow survived that. And it's not like Jack Flaherty and Yoshinobu Yamamoto were elite all postseason. They had good moments and they had good games, but they were also susceptible at times. The Padres had the Dodgers on the ropes in 2024 and led that series 2-1. You can navigate, and the Dodgers proved it, and the Padres have proved it before. 2020 postseason comes to mind, that game 3 against the Cardinals. You can throw a bullpen day, and you can win postseason games that way. But to feel confident going into a longer postseason series, I'm talking about a best of 5 or a best of 7, I want 4 legitimate starters, because I know now the Dodgers are going to have 4+ legitimate starters. So I would prefer to be in a similar spot. But again, if you land Roki Sasaki and you keep Dylan Cease, you're still not a favorite to win the NL West. You're still not a favorite to win the National League. I mean, it's not like the Mets all of a sudden are going anywhere. The Dodgers didn't, just win the 2024 World Series. I just think that if you land Sasaki and trade Cease, are you really better off than not even landing Sasaki at all and keeping Cease?
Well, let's face it, there's nothing that they can do that would make them the favorites to win the NL.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably true. It doesn't mean it's impossible. I mean, I would have told you last year the Dodgers probably would have won the division by 20 games. They didn't. They won 98 games. I think they won the division by 5 games. So it still has to play out. And even a heavily favored team over the course of 162 isn't, inevitably going to win the division. But yeah, I think most Padres fans go into 2025 expecting the Dodgers to win the division, but then hoping that the Padres vie for a playoff spot. And then once you're in the postseason, put yourself in a position where you can win series. And that's what they did last year. Got by the Braves, took a series lead against the Dodgers. I just don't know how confident I would feel. You get rid of Cease, you got Sasaki, Darvish, and King. Are they all going to stay healthy? And then what are you doing with the 4th and 5th spots in your rotation? So I'd love to hear from Padres fans. 70470, start it with the word team, or you can call us 877-767-4760. Again, 877-767-4760. If they land Sasaki, should they trade Dylan Cease or not? 70470, start it with team, or 877-767-4760. We'll get you ready for the Holiday Bowl coming up later today at Snapdragon Stadium with Matt Park. He's the voice of the Orange. Cynthia Freeland is on the show at 4 p.m. Jeff Smith, the founder of the Mesa Foundation, will join us at 3:30. We'll hear from Bernie Wilson coming up. Just getting started on a Friday. It's Jon and Jim. All right, Matt Park, voice of the Orange, will join us in about 10 minutes. You think about Syracuse and San Diego, I think of the aircraft carrier game. That Indianapolis.
That's what I
Thank you. We'll catch up on tonight's game. Washington State, Syracuse on paper is not overly compelling. Syracuse is a huge favorite. We'll get Matt Park, longtime voice of the Orange, to join
Maybe we'll
us.
get
coming up in 10
another
minutes.
overtime game.
It's like you said today, we nearly had another one. If not for Oklahoma, I think wisely going for 2. Just win the game or lose the game. A lot of teams are playing for ties to get to overtime. Like, it's hard to win in overtime. If you have a chance to win a game, try to win the game. And that's what Oklahoma did today. Now, they didn't win the game, and Navy did in that Armed Forces Bowl. All right, AM radio keeps vital voices accessible. Congress can secure its future. But we need your help. Text AM to 52886 now to support keeping AM radio in cars. Tell your member of Congress to pass legislation now and keep AM radio in cars. Standard message and data rates apply. All right, I want to hear from Padres fans. If the Padres are so fortunate to land international pitching superstar Roki Sasaki, would you trade Dylan Cease to address other needs, or would you keep him? 877-767-4760 or 70470. Start it with the word team. 877-767-4760 if you want to call in, or text us 70470. Start it with the word team. So a couple of people have chimed in off the text line. 760 says, I think we trade Cease either way. That would surprise me either way. If you don't have Sasaki and you lose Cease, what is the plan for the rotation? That is a scary proposition to enter 2025 with an aging Yu Darvish. Michael King's been great. I mean, Michael King could absolutely vie for a top spot in a rotation in 2025. But Michael King and an aging Yu Darvish and no Cease and no Darvish and no Sasaki, and there's no pennant and there's no deep playoff run in that scenario, in my opinion. 360 says, with Musgrove out and Yu Darvish, the only way you trade Cease, even after signing Roki, is if you get a huge return, which could include offloading Xander or Cron's contract. That's an interesting perspective on it. Could a Dylan Cease trade allow you to get underneath some bad money, so to speak, right? Cronenworth contract is nowhere near as bad, obviously, as the Bogarts contract, where you still owe him 9/11 of $280 million. Like that's a fortune of money. I don't know the total dollars there, but 225, 230. I mean, he's owed a fortune. He's not getting younger. He's in the second half of his career. He has not performed well as a Padre. I don't see any scenario where you offload that contract. I mean, maybe you eat a good portion of it and somehow are able to get rid of him. I don't see it. Jay Cronenworth, that's more interesting to me because I think he's got 5 years left on that deal, which means he's owed something in the neighborhood of $50+ million. Maybe you write off a portion of it and you can unload him in a deal for Dylan Cease. I've never been a big proponent of, like, you've already made a bad decision, so double down on the bad decision. And what I mean by that is, like, all right, you already signed Jay Cronenworth to the bad deal. You don't want to offload him and create a bad deal just to get rid of him. Like, you've already signed him to the, unenviable deal. You've already signed Xander Bogaerts to this awful deal, arguably the worst deal in the history of the franchise. You don't want to just get rid of him to get rid of him and eat a lot of the salary and get rid of players in the process and not get the right return. Like, don't make one decision become two bad decisions, is what I would say regarding a Cronenworth and a Bogaerts. But if you can get out from underneath from one of those deals, that becomes almost like a no-brainer, if that's a possibility. 760, following up, pitching, rotation. King, Darvish, Waldron, Brito, and they call Perez for cheap again. That's not going to work. It's just, Matt Waldron had a great 15-start stretch, finished the year in AAA. Johnny Brito has not shown that he's capable of starting for half a season, let alone a full season in the major leagues. And Martin Perez isn't coming back in 2025. And to me, that's just not near good enough. And you just made a trade less than a year ago for Dylan Cease. And he just put together a top 5 Cy Young season. And again, if the command is so great, if it's the Juan Soto trade and you can get a starter like Michael King and you can address rotation depth with Brito and Vasquez, you can get a catching option that's going to help you like Kyle Higashioka, but they're not going to get that return in a trade for Dylan Cease. I think they get a good return. I really do. But how good of a return can you get for a guy that is going to be a free agent at the end of 2025?
You'll get a better return than we got for Hader and Snell.
Exactly, which was nothing.
Which is jack squat.
True. But I guess the question is this. The question for John Seidler, for the front office, for the coaching staff, and for the players, is the expectation to be good, or is the expectation to follow up on 2024 and potentially be better? Because if the expectation is just to be good, they have good pieces. They do. I mean, the Machados and the Tatises, the Michael Kings, like they have good pieces. Like that's clear. That's evident. But do they have enough pieces in the absence of Roki Sasaki, in the absence of Dylan Cease, to be as good as they were as last year? And if they're not as good as they were last year, and they didn't win the World Series last year, let alone get to the championship series, what would lead us to believe that without Dylan Cease and without Roki Sasaki, and with the Dodgers doubling down and adding Blake Snell and others and other teams around them getting better, Giants, Mets, that the Padres have a realistic shot to make a deep run in the postseason? Again, you never say never. It is sports. Things can happen. I think they're somewhat well situated to make the postseason, regardless of whether they land Roki Sasaki or not. But are they situated to make a deep run in the postseason? We'll get back to it coming up later this hour. But on the other side, Matt Park, longtime voice of the Syracuse Orange. He'll get us ready for tonight's Holiday Bowl at Snapdragon Stadium. First ever Holiday Bowl at Snapdragon. It's the Orange. It's Washington State. And Matt Park, voice of the Orange, joins us next on Jon and Jim.
This report is sponsored by Mattress Firm. In NBA news, the struggling Kings have fired head coach Mike Brown. The decision to fire Brown comes as the Kings are mired in a 5-game losing streak, their longest since January of 2022, with all 5 losses coming at home. Sacramento entered today at 13-18 on the season. Navy defeated Oklahoma in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl today, 21-20. They had a defensive stand on an Oklahoma 2-point conversion with about 6 seconds to go in the game to seal it. And in other bowl news, the Holiday Bowl is tonight at Snapdragon Stadium when Syracuse takes on Washington State. Kickoff on that one is at 5 p.m. And don't forget, the Aztecs are back at it tomorrow when they take on Utah State at Viejas Arena. Our pregame coverage starts right here at 2 o'clock, and Uncle Teddy will have the tip shortly after 3. Score deep discounts and deeper sleep during Mattress Firm's semi-annual sale and clearance. Take up to 60% off select mattresses and more. Plus, get a free adjustable base on qualifying purchases. Shop today for free and fast delivery. Restrictions apply.
Tonight, first ever Holiday Bowl at Snapdragon Stadium in Mission Valley. We've got Washington State, and we have the Syracuse Orange. And our pleasure to welcome Matt Park to the show, longtime voice of the Orange, with us here on Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760, to preview tonight's game. So, Matt, first of all, appreciate it. And I'm wondering, I'm just thinking about this off air heading into the conversation. Is this your first time with the Orange in San Diego since the aircraft carrier game?
Yes.
Okay, so
yep, that was a blast, a memorable experience, and don't think it's my first time in San Diego since then, but first time working, yes.
All right, so I mean, there's been a lot between actually Syracuse and San Diego State when it comes to men's basketball, right? 2020 NCAA tournament. Aztecs played the Carrier Dome.
Games.
Yeah,
the aircraft carrier game obviously was really historic. It's fun to relive the memories of that, and part of the bowl experience was a trip to the USS Tripoli.
Cool.
And so we remember the time on the Midway and that game. And obviously, San Diego State probably doesn't remember it quite as fondly, but it was a game with, one made jump shot, I think, in the entire game, and no free throws and that kind of thing. It was really unusual, but a fun time and great pictures and that kind of stuff from back then, and part of all the great stuff that this area has to offer.
Matt Park is with us. He's the longtime voice of the Syracuse Orange. So on paper, we see the changes that Washington State has had. Head coach, transfer portal is impacting all programs in FBS. But the bowl season has provided some unbelievably compelling and close games. What are your expectations for tonight?
I think it could be that. On paper, it really shouldn't be,
yep.
Which means that maybe that's exactly what we'll wind up with. I think the hard thing, and we're just kind of unfolding our homework here and starting to figure out exactly what happens. We'll watch warm-ups more closely than any other game just to see who is actually suited up for Washington State. Everybody knows they have close to 30 in the transfer portal. 6, 8, 10 of them, right away are not going to be here because they've already made commitments to other schools. Can't imagine that they would play. And they're going into the portal predated the coaching change. The Washington State policy apparently has been, if you entered the portal sort of because of the coaching change or after the head coach left for Wake Forest, then you're at least welcome to be eligible to play here. Now, how many actually do, I think, remains to be seen. But if they don't have a representative roster, and I would imagine most of Syracuse's players are going to at least be available, I would think Syracuse is rightfully so heavily favored, but that's why they play the games.
I thought one of the great college football games of the year, especially for us here out west that cover the Mountain West, was that Syracuse UNLV game in Vegas. Yeah. That was an incredible game. I mean, UNLV, it felt like had it won 4 or 5 times. I forget that individual effort that someone made on Syracuse was incredible on a 4th down play.
Yeah, Quinn Allen.
That was incredible.
Back, had a couple of great carries right at the end of the game. Yeah, and then a couple weeks after that against Virginia Tech, he had a very similar thing in an overtime win at home.
Yeah, when I'm watching the Syracuse offense, and I watched that game in its entirety, but I haven't seen much of Syracuse this year. What's it been like to cover this offense? Because it looks like it's been, a really intriguing watch led by Kyle McCord.
Yes, he's been awesome. I mean, just put it this way: if he throws for 267 yards today, which would be less than his season low for the year,
Right.
then he's the all-time single-season passing leader in the ACC.
Hmm.
So he only had one game this year below 320 passing yards. You know, so that he's
Incredible.
just been incredible. He's exceptionally accurate. As long as they protect him, he had one really bad game, goofy game against Pittsburgh. Just kind of woke up on the wrong side of the bed on the road. Before you knew it, he'd thrown 3 pick sixes, and that game was over. And it was kind of a curse. Pitt did not win after that game. Pitt went to 7-0 after that. They finished the season losing 6 in a row, including an overtime bowl game here recently. And McCord's gone completely in the other direction. You know, at Syracuse, the record books are primarily running more than they are passing, but he's rewritten record books, and he was the first guy really to say that he was intending to play this game. So I expect him to come out and give a reasonable effort here. You know, we'll have to sort of see and adjust expectations over the course of the game, but he's a lot of fun to watch, and it would have been great to see him against John Mateer, the Washington State quarterback, who had an incredible regular season as well.
Yeah, we saw Mateer at Snapdragon actually earlier this year. Of course, Washington State has played at Snapdragon Stadium. They beat San Diego State and come from behind fashion. A game they trailed in the fourth quarter, 29-17. Matt, I'm curious to get your thoughts just on bowl season in general today with the portal, with the expanded playoff. How has it changed for you? Even over the last 5 or 10 years, how has bowl season changed one way or another for you?
You know, it's hard to say because it's not like Syracuse of recent here in these last 2 decades was regularly going to bowls. You know, I think I was talking about last night. I think this is my 21st season doing the play-by-play here and my 7th bowl that I've been to. So it wasn't like I don't have the greatest memories of the 2001 Russell Athletic Bowl in Orlando, which was over on a pick six 30 seconds into the game. It's not like we've been frolicking in memories about those anyway. So if you want to talk about lamenting this time of year, the bowls are different than, you know, your grandfather's bowls. You know, yeah, it's weird. It's just weird. I don't know that it's better, worse, whatever. I think it's all, you know, in the eye of the beholder, because you can make the argument either way, right? Like Washington State's limping in here, but they might have a great story to tell about the 6 guys that hung around and maybe pulled off an upset win and won it for the interim head coach and that kind of thing. And that's their story. Or you can have, you know, last year Syracuse had the coaching change and had the bunch of transfers out, and South Florida was a rising program and kicked Syracuse's butt in the Boca Raton Bowl. That was a great story for them. So, you know, I'm good friends with Nick Carparelli, the head of bowl, you know, season or whatever. That's a tough job that he's got to promote the bowl, you know, sort of structure. And they're doing the best job they can to point out what the positives of it are. I think we're looking forward to a new venue here. It's cool to have a bowl in a small stadium. You might as well. You know, if this was, you know, expecting 30,000 fans in a stadium that held 70, what's the point of that? You know, so I think it's all about the attitude you take. And for right now, for Syracuse, the storyline is, can they win 10 games in a season? They've only done that a couple of times this century. So that's kind of what's at stake right now.
Matt Park is the voice of the Orange. We all know that Syracuse, New York isn't exactly warm this time of year, but obviously there's a lot of men's basketball fans in upstate New York as well. What kind of contingent, what type of traveling party, how many Orange fans would make the trip to San Diego?
You know, there's a few that this is, obviously the university has plenty of alums in the Southern California. I mean, not as many as New York and DC and Boston and that kind of thing, but we've seen folks who are really appreciative of the team being out here. And, you know, now that the ACC touches Berkeley and Palo Alto, and Syracuse played at Berkeley earlier this year, played at Vegas, as you pointed out. So it's a national institution with fans everywhere. I mean, it's not going to be gobs and gobs of them, but this is a hell of a place to be at this time of year. And so I think for the folks that made the trip, whether they're local or have come from upstate New York or wherever, have enjoyed themselves and will enjoy the game. So, you know, not the huge, it certainly would have been bigger crowds if they played in a different bowl in Charlotte or Orlando or whatever, but this is still pretty cool.
Matt, before you go, thoughts on Snapdragon Stadium? Like you said, you know, smaller venue. You know, Chargers used to play Qualcomm right there on that Mission Valley site. Now it's that 35,000 seat stadium for San Diego State. But overall impressions of what is now a third-year stadium.
Yeah, first impression, really cool. They might want to train the security people at the media entrance to kind of keep it moving a little bit. But other than that, that could be somebody else's problem for the next time. But no, I think the place is cool. What more do you know? San Diego State. What more do you need? It can be expanded, right? If they take off, and wish all great things to Sean Lewis and in the Pac-12, and you got a need for a 60, 70,000 seat stadium. It looks like that could be expanded here if need be, and it's easy to get to. And it's hard to be in a bad mood around these parts. I know that, but I like a lot of the touches. The tiers are cool. The kind of speckled seats, to trick you into kind of a certain feeling when you're inside. But for a bowl venue, I mean, why not? This is pretty cool.
Yeah, it should be cool. Looking forward to it tonight against Syracuse and Washington State from Snapdragon Stadium in San Diego, where tickets are still available for the Holiday Bowl, to be followed by the 101.5 KGB Sky Show, which is really something that people have fond memories of here in San Diego. Matt, looking forward to the game tonight. Thanks for hopping on here on San Diego Sports 760.
You bet, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, Matt Park, the longtime voice of the Syracuse Orange. We'll get back to the conversation we started the show with. Dylan Cease or Roki Sasaki. Is it as simple as that? We're here until 6 p.m. Jeff Smith, the president of the Mesa Foundation, will join us at 3:30. Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network at 4. It's Jon and Jim. Right, back with you here on Jon and Jim. Again, Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network. She will join us at 4 p.m. Second to last weekend of the regular season in the National Football League. Look, that's gone quick. So we'll get her reaction on Christmas Day, on Saquon Barkley's pursuit of the rushing record, despite the fact that other people doesn't like it. And much more with Cynthia Freeland coming up at 4 p.m. Jeff Smith, Mesa Foundation will join us at 3:30. Bernie Wilson earlier this week. Bernie Wilson, the AP, coming up at 5 p.m. So people have weighed in on this this idea that, if the Padres were to land Roki Sasaki, would they then turn around and trade Dylan Cease? This is what Jon Heyman wrote last night in the New York Post. That if they land Sasaki, they'd be more apt to trade Dylan Cease because, again, they've got payroll numbers they want to stay in. They'll stay with the CBT. To Brent's point earlier, they have left field to address, they have catcher to address, they have back rotation to address, maybe portions of their bullpen and bench as well. It's an interesting. Maybe that's why what we said yesterday, maybe Monday, that the offseason starts based on Sasaki's decision. He picks you, that sends you down one path. He doesn't pick you, it sends you down another, but it's hard to make any real decision until you get clarity on Sasaki. And we won't fully get clarity until the 15th of January, which is still just about 2 or 3 weeks away.
I just think it's funny how he phrased it where, if they get Roki Sasaki, they would be more likely to trade Dylan Cease. You hear that, my only one's like, duh. Right. Because they're adding something. Yeah, exactly. It's not like, that's a real hot take. They get a better catcher, they're not going to play Campbell Sano. That's not like a hot take.
Right. No, absolutely. So, again, we'll continue.
And they're definitely not going to trade him if they don't get Roki.
Yeah, exactly. We'll continue to react to it. Would you trade Dylan Cease if you landed Roki Sasaki? Padres fans, 877-767-4760, or you can text us, 70470. Start your message with the word team. Again, 70470, start it with the word team. There's some breaking news in sports media as Greg Gumbel has passed away at the age of 78. So Greg Gumbel, this just coming out, there was a statement, I think, put out by CBS within the last 10 or 20 minutes. Greg Gumbel, who for decades worked on CBS, right? NFL, college basketball, Olympics, baseball, NBA, even NASCAR, I think at one point, ESPN at one point in his career, legendary, iconic broadcaster. Greg, I didn't realize he was 78 years of age, but Greg Gumbel, according to his family, which has put out a statement, has passed away on this 27th day of December at the age of 78. When I think about Greg Gumbel, he's synonymous with high-level sports broadcasting for me, and really the NFL on CBS.
That's what I think is NFL on CBS.
And the NCAA tournament, right?
Well, that, and when Family Guy first started, he has a brother, too, that does news, and Family Guy had a fake, TV show that was like a buddy cop show called Gumbel and Gumbel, to where it's like the two brothers did a cop show. So that's the second thing I always think of is Gumbel to Gumbel on Family Guy.
Yeah, so Greg Gumbel, again, 78 years of age. I mean, really
he had cancer, I guess.
I didn't realize that. An incredible career.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just an incredible career. Covered a little bit of everything, but it doesn't get bigger than covering the NFL on CBS. I mean, when you think about the assignments, you're a sports fan, you turn the television on, it's Sunday, and he's just there.
Well, and that was the NFL on CBS when it was only either the NFL on CBS or the NFL on, Fox. There's the NFL is only on 2 networks.
Sure.
It wasn't like it is today where it's on,
Six.
It's on Peacock, It's on ESPN, it's on
Netflix,
it's on this,
Amazon.
Exactly.
Yep.
You were one or the other, and he was on, the big AFC thing.
Yeah, I mean, just an absolute titan in the sports broadcasting injury. And it's like sometimes you think some of these personalities or some of these figures are going to be there for forever. I think about Keith Jackson when I was younger.
Yeah.
Or you think about, just these titans, right? That seemingly have their jobs for a half century, right? Like I'm thinking about who recently just retired that, spent 50. I'm thinking of someone that did like Al Michaels has been doing it. I mean, Miracle on Ice. Like you're going back 45 years. He's still calling games on Amazon. That's what broadcasting kind of is, right? I mean, you've got people that you grow up with and your kids grow up with and your grandparents grew up with. Like that Ted Leitner in San Diego, Vince Scully in Los Angeles. There's Harry Carey, Chicago, St. Louis, Harry Callis, Philadelphia. I mean, there's a zillion examples of this, right? Jack Buck, St. Louis. There's a zillion examples of this. They're just kind of a part of your family because you hear them each and every day for so long, from the time that they're 30 years of age to 40 to 50 to 60 to 70 to 80. There's people that hold these jobs for 50 years that literally die in these jobs, and they feel like they're a member of your family. I think about Greg Gumbel. He seemed like someone that was very relatable. He was there for you. Very easy delivery to the ears. Always had a smile on his face and basically got out of the way for the others to do what they had to do as well. Like, I just thought he was a really good, competent broadcaster in a myriad of different sports. And it's sad news that he's passed at the age of 78.
He didn't make it all about himself.
100%.
Lots of, I guess pundits, if you want to call them that now these days, it's not about, okay, see, I'm the host, but I'm going to defer to the guys that actually played and coached and let them do it, to where it's like, no, they got to be in the spotlight because I'm the host. So I'm going to go in there, and it doesn't matter that the last time I, played the sport was, junior high. I'm going to sit here and tell this 16-time all-pro defensive lineman why he's wrong with his take and why I'm right. He just deferred to the pros and just moderated.
And something about also Greg Gumbel on Selection Sunday that just,
Yes.
it just got you ready for some of the biggest days in sports.
Pretty much when you think of CBS Sports, it's him and Jim Nantz. Really,
Yeah.
Honestly, it's, that's the first two names I always think of as him and Jim Nantz.
All right. So further reaction to that on the other side. Again, Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. She will join us coming up at 4 p.m. We are here until 6. Just getting started. Don't go anywhere. It's Jon and Jim.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. In NBA news, the struggling Kings fired head coach Mike Brown today. The decision to fire Brown comes as the Kings are mired in a 5-game losing streak, their longest since 2022, with all 5 losses coming at home. The Kings entered today at 13-18 on the season. Navy defeated Oklahoma in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl today, 21-20. The defense had a stand on a 2-point conversion with about 6 seconds to go that sealed it for the midshipmen. And the Holiday Bowl is tonight at Snapdragon Stadium when Syracuse takes on Washington State. Kickoff for that one is at 5 p.m. And don't forget the Aztecs are back at it tomorrow afternoon at Viejas Arena when they host Utah State. Our pregame coverage starts right here at 2 o'clock. And Uncle Teddy will have the tip shortly after 3. And finally, Hall of Fame broadcaster Greg Gumbel has passed away today at the age of 78. Don't miss new member deals dropping every week with My Lowe's Rewards, and it's free to join because Lowe's knows deals. My Lowe's Rewards program is subject to terms and conditions. Visit lowes.com/terms for details, subject to change.
It's Jon and Jim to warm up that drive home.
Mark Ziegler at the UT. For San Diego State to have a chance to earn an at-large berth, what would you expect they would need to do in the league?
Now, entering the league, given their metrics, took a big jump from the Cal game. I think right now, as we speak, they're in the tournament, no doubt about that. I'm not sure any other team in the league can say that because they either don't have a marquee win or they have a bad loss or two.
Now, time for Jon and Jim.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? Hour 2, Jon and Jim here until 6 p.m. We have Jeff Smith from the Mesa Foundation. He will swing by coming up at 3:30. Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network, will be on the show at 4 p.m. Bernie Wilson from the AP on Ricky Henderson's passing. You'll hear from Bernie coming up at 5 p.m. So there's a lot to get to over the next few hours. We'll get into San Diego State, Utah State. We'll do that coming up at some point in the 4 or 5 o'clock hour. I mentioned something. We're going to touch on this with Jeff Smith coming up at 3:30. I saw him earlier. He's the founder of the Mesa Foundation. There's this, I think this is fair to say, I think a lot of sports fans kind of stigmatize NIL. Would that be fair? Like, oh, NIL, it's ruined college sports. How many times have you heard that? Transfer portal, it's ruined college sports. I get it. Those opinions are fair opinions. I'm not here to convince anyone to change their opinion. That is not my point. But hear me out for a second. And I think people sometimes get turned off by the idea, and this happens in professional sports. You get turned off by when you hear from an athlete like, oh, how $44 million a year for Purdy, that's nowhere near enough. Like, we're trying to put food on the table. Like, it's hard to relate when you hear people making $300 million contracts and $500 million contracts, and Shohei Ohtani literally deferring $680 million. Like, it's laughable, right? Like, we're just trying to make ends meet. That's what most people in this country are trying to do. They're trying to make ends meet. And then they see, student athletes making hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars through NIL. But then every once in a while, there's a story like the one that came out today involving San Diego State men's basketball and the Mesa Foundation. And if you missed this, you may have. I tweeted about it on social media. It'll get some media coverage, I think, over the next 24 hours because there were some media outlets there when they made this announcement. But this, to me, is incredible. San Diego State does not have the richest collective in men's basketball. I think Mesa's done an unbelievable job. It's a nonprofit. They've supported the community. They've helped out all kinds of initiatives and causes with the student athletes, men's and women's basketball players. And in return as well, we all understand how NIL works. The men's basketball players, are paid, an annual NIL amount or a monthly NIL amount. Same thing with women's basketball. But San Diego State's collective does not provide the same amount of money for student athletes than Kentucky's collective, than Kansas's collective, than Duke and North Carolina. You understand the point. Now, again, they played in that Players Era Festival that brought in $1 million. That gives them hopefully an opportunity to retain a lot of players on this team for next season, bring in some players for the upcoming season as well. But what San Diego State's men's basketball team decided to do, I think might be unprecedented. Now, the NIL era has only been a few years, but recently they went to Hoover High School for a Feeding San Diego event, because there's so many people. There's so many people in our community. San Diego's not a cheap place to live, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. It's not cheap to live in San Diego. And there are thousands upon thousands of San Diegans that rely on Feeding San Diego to put food on the table, right? And that includes, young people in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. And I think recently San Diego State men's basketball went to Hoover High School for one of these Feeding San Diego events. And they're distributing food and they're helping out in the community and they're seeing the impact that Feeding San Diego has on San Diegans. The men's basketball team decided collectively to give a portion of their NIL dollars to Feeding San Diego. Every single player on the team elected to give money to Feeding San Diego. That is not a story you expect to hear covering college athletics. Like, you don't think a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds are thinking about, and again, maybe this isn't fair to say, but you're not necessarily thinking, a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds are going to think about how they can help their community, and they're going to reach into their pockets to assist. And that's what happened today. Mesa Foundation, along with every single student athlete for San Diego State men's basketball, providing a portion of their NIL proceeds to Feeding San Diego. And that's the type of story I'm here for in the holidays. And we'll talk more about it with Jeff Smith coming up at 3:30. But again, there's this, I think stigma is the right word, this belief that, oh my gosh, like, why would I support a collective? It's hard enough for me to put food on the table. Like, I have bills to pay. It's expensive in San Diego. Why would I support a collective? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, it's the cost of doing business right now in college athletics. You want to see San Diego State men's basketball and football be viable and competitive. It's a part of it. You have to be competitive in the space. And then you're also supporting, not just future like professional athletes, but future leaders. Like, not every single player on San Diego State is going to play in the NBA. Not all of them are going to play professionally. You're going to have people that go on to have careers in finance or healthcare or education, right? That's what a lot of these student athletes are going to become. And you got future leaders potentially in San Diego making decisions that you don't necessarily expect always young people to make. But again, really cool announcement. In conjunction with the Mesa Foundation Collective, San Diego State men's basketball, each player donating a portion of their NIL proceeds for the year to Feeding San Diego. I don't know if it's ever been done. I know that there have been student athletes that have been touched by causes and initiatives and have started foundations or charities or given back. That's clear. Maybe there's someone that, is related to someone that is fighting cancer and they elected on their own to give money to the American Cancer Society. I'm making it up. There's examples obviously out there of student athletes giving back to their community. There's players on San Diego State that have given back to their community well beyond this as well. But for an entire team to do something related to NIL and give dollars to a community outreach like Feeding San Diego, I think it might be unprecedented. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more in the coming hours and days and weeks, but that to me is a pretty cool announcement and something that you don't hear every day in professional or college sports, truthfully.
I would think not too many teams are doing that stuff, because if they were, you would think it would be leaked out into the ether, or, it would get put out just so then they can go, oh, look how great Gonzaga is. They've, donated all their NIL money and bought turkeys for people on Thanksgiving. You would have heard about stuff like that. A lot of the good stories, they stick out these days, I guess, whether it's on your X feed or your Facebook feed or whatever, when they come through, they stand out because they're kind of not rare, but they're the ratio of bad ones to good ones like this aren't very close these days.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? We all go through our lives. We get so consumed by our daily schedule, right? I got to get to the grocery store. I got to put gas in the car. I got to get to work. I need to pay the bills. We all get consumed by it. We all get enamored by it. We all get caught up. And every once in a while, something will stop you in your tracks. Maybe a health scare, maybe a news story. But, it's like I was there today at this press conference, and I'm listening to someone speak on behalf of Feeding San Diego. And it really is it's something that you don't necessarily always think about, but there's a real need. There's a real need for putting food on the table. It's like hunger is like a silent thing. You don't know when someone is struggling to put food on a table, right? You don't necessarily know it. You may know it, but you may also not have any awareness of it. And she made a really interesting point, this woman that was representing Feeding San Diego earlier today. In speaking with the media, I think she said there's 1,800 students at Hoover High School, 300 of which rely on Feeding San Diego. 300 students, high school age students at Hoover High School, 1/6 of the school relies on meals and food from Feeding San Diego. They end up providing millions of meals within the county each and every year, right? To all types of people, right? Anyone that needs it. But again, it's like you go through your day, you don't necessarily think about it, right? There's so many things we don't think about. I get all worried about, like, why would they go for 2 there? What an idiot. Like, what do we need to do to retain this player in the portal? Or how could the Padres not have more money to spend and put themselves in a position where they can keep Dylan Cease and also land Roki Sasaki? We get so focused. And I love talking sports because it separates you from the real world. That's what I love about sports. You can get so consumed and fascinated by it. I pretend like it is the world. Like, I'm going to turn on the college football quarterfinals, and to me, that's a huge deal. In the grand scheme, is it a huge deal? Is it as important as putting food on the table? Absolutely not. Right? Is it as important as putting a roof over people that are unhoused? Absolutely not. But that's what we love about sports. It's a great separator. It's something that allows you to take your attention off the real world for 3 hours and pretend like it is the real world. And it is for us. I mean, people come to us to talk sports. To me, it is life or death. I put my head on the pillow some nights and I can't sleep because of a San Diego State football or basketball result. We've all been there. You can't sleep because the Padres lost, or you're a fan of the Chargers or whomever. We have all been there. But in the grand scheme, it's not the most important thing in the world. Your health is, your family is, your ability to put food on the table, put a shelter over your head. These are the things that really do matter. So when I hear about, San Diego State and Mesa giving back and doing so and partnering with something that's so important in our community like Feeding San Diego, I think it's really cool. And we'll catch up with Jeff Smith on it coming up at 3:30. Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network will join us at 4 p.m. We'll touch more on what's at stake in these final 2 weeks of the regular season of the NFL. On the other side, Cynthia Freeland at 4 p.m., Jeff Smith from the Mesa Foundation coming up at 3:30. We are here until 6. It's Jon and Jim. Keep up with San Diego Sports 760 anytime, anywhere, whether you're stepping out of the car or settling in at home. Just ask your Google or Alexa smart speaker to play AM 760 or stream it live through the iHeartRadio app. It's easier to stay connected with your favorite shows like this one. San Diego Sports 760 goes where you go. Jon and Jim, Jon and Brent. Jim will be back on Monday. Yes. Do you?
He's not gonna get us something expensive. I think he'll get us something cheesy.
I didn't get you guys
So that one time he got us we got
even that matters.
it was on my refrigerator.
I see the same thing happen. Anyway, I'll say this. Jim will be back Monday, and you know Jim is with the NFL. Like, it's all Niners, and that's provided some good commentary over the last few years. Niners have been really good. Well, now they're not. So he's completely checked out. Niners are awful. This Monday night game, Detroit, San Francisco, there have been some, it's like, it's not even that compelling because the Niners are out of it and Detroit's really good. So I don't even know how compelling that is. But I mean, we're down to the final couple of weeks of the regular season. This Thursday night game truly lived up to the billing of being an awful game.
Yeah.
To the point where Al Michaels mentioned the fact that the White Sox and Mariners played a 6-3 game last year, and the Seahawks beat the Bears 6-3 in another NFL game without a touchdown. We've seen now 2 of them, I think, in the last 3 weeks. Like, you're a Bears fan. Like,
at one point, we had more punts than we had total offensive yardage.
Now, they covered, to their credit. Good teams cover. Better teams find a way to win, though. But does it get much lower than this? A 6-3 home loss to the Seattle Seahawks?
No,
Not really, right?
Because their time management skills weren't any better in this game than they were when Eberflus was there on Thanksgiving, to where it's like, oh, okay. And, and then the other thing is they needed like 5 yards for a field goal attempt. It was laughable that Al Michaels kept going, oh, Santos could kick a 50. Shut up, Al. He can't hit a 57-yard field goal for anything. They proved that in the Green Bay game. But all they needed was 5-6 yards. And they at least could have had an attempt to tie it. Granted, when you have their record, who really cares whether you're going to overtime? But instead, it was, oh, okay, we went for a touchdown, not even close. Then, okay, another 20-yard pass, not even close. And it's just like, hey, guys, remember, we only need 5 yards. And they're just like, no, we're going to get 20 yards or we're going to do nothing. But once again, they just sat there and killed. Williams claimed that he got hit in the throat. And that was his excuse for their poor time management. But it's just
one thing after the other.
Yeah, it's another game of you guys just sitting there and you have a minute to go and they just sit there and just, the old Berman thing of tick, 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 and they don't do anything.
Well, how about this? So upcoming this weekend in the NFL, we've already had the Christmas Day games. They were compelling. You had a couple of good games. I mean, they weren't good games, but on paper, good games, teams with winning records. This weekend, there are only 2 games that pit a team with a winning record against a team with a winning record. Only 2 all weekend long. It is Sunday night, Falcons-Commanders. The Falcons are 8-7. The Commanders are 10-5. And then that late afternoon Packers-Vikings game in Minneapolis where the Vikings are 13-2 and the Packers are 11-4. That's it for this weekend. And then we're in the final week of the regular season. In terms of what's still left out there, like in the playoff conversation, the AFC is kind of determined because you've got LA at 9-6. I'm talking about the Chargers. You've got the Broncos at 9-6. Those would be the last 2 teams in the playoffs if the season ended right now. The other teams chasing them are under 500. Indianapolis is 7-8. Miami 7-8. Cincinnati 7-8. So that's kind of already determined. Then in the NFC, when you look at the wild card race, it's basically coming down to it's a closer race. You've got Seattle in the conversation at 9-7, Tampa's 8-7, Atlanta's 8-7, the Rams are 9-6. So this is going to come down to the final week of the regular season. But the AFC's kind of been determined. So I mean, is it that intriguing right now? You got Kansas City that's wrapped up the top seed. I guess Detroit still needs to wrap up the top seed in the NFC, and they will do that. Potentially, will they do that with a win? I'm not sure if they wrap it up with a win or not.
They're only 1 game up on Philly. So.
Right. So maybe they still need 2 more wins. But it looks like you're going to have Detroit as the top.
Well, if Detroit wins and Philly loses, then they would lock it up.
Right. But it looks like you have KC as the top seed in the AFC. and Detroit as the top seed in the NFC. What would you say? Would your hunch say that those two teams meet in the Super Bowl or not? I would say no. I would say no. Detroit's dealing with injuries. I think there's a lot of parity in the NFC. I think there's parity in the AFC, truthfully, with Buffalo and Baltimore as well. So my hunch is no, we don't get a Kansas City-Detroit Super Bowl, even if they're both 1 seeds. What would you say?
Probably not, but I'd have to see the bracket because without knowing who they would have to play,
Right. Well,
that would make a difference.
Two home games away from a Super Bowl. Right. And again, in the AFC, that's not going to be easy. Buffalo could be in there.
I have way more faith in the Chiefs, obviously, than I do Detroit, but I don't know. Detroit's kind of proved everyone wrong the last year or two that is used to not having faith in them to have faith. But, it's like Jim always kind of harps on about with Dan Campbell and his, just go for it attitude of, that might come back to bite him in the ass in the playoffs. So that's part of the reason why I don't have as much faith.
I'm just looking at like the other threats, the NFC. I think Philadelphia is a legitimate threat. I don't think Minnesota is. I really don't think Green Bay is. Do you? Or
No.
Washington. So I think it comes down to Detroit or Philadelphia in the NFC. I know Hurts is banged up right now with a concussion. I think in the AFC, I could make a compelling case for Kansas City, Buffalo, or Baltimore. Right? Like it's not that hard to see Buffalo winning at Arrowhead. I mean, they've already beaten the Chiefs this year. And is it hard to see the Ravens winning at Arrowhead? Maybe in the postseason, but I'm a big fan of the Ravens right now. So I think there's 3 teams that could get there in the AFC. I think there's 2 teams that could get there in the NFC, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I think the top 3 in the AFC are definitely stronger than the top 3. Because right now they got the Rams as the 3rd seed in the NFC.
Right. Well, we'll catch up with Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network on it at 4 p.m. She joins us weekly, courtesy of Hamul. But on the other side, Jeff Smith, Mesa Foundation, we're talking about this. Aztecs men's basketball announcing that every player on the roster will make a donation to Feeding San Diego this holiday season. We'll get into it with Jeff Smith from the Mesa Foundation. We're here until 6 p.m. Stay with us on Jon and Jim. community, I just find so incredibly unique. So let's just start there. I mean, how does this come about, and how impactful is this that San Diego State basketball players are giving back to Feeding San Diego?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on again. Another proud Aztec moment for sure. I think for those that have had the opportunity to be around the program, it comes as no surprise. But the fact that the broader community can really find out what kind of young men that we have on this team is amazing to watch. It really happened, to use kind of an overly used word, organically. We have, since we started Mesa as the exclusive NIL organization supporting the men's and women's Aztec basketball teams, we focused on connecting these student athletes in the community and have made some great partnerships along the way, including one of our most recent with Feeding San Diego, and recently had an opportunity to attend one of their food distribution events at Hoover High School. And the guys, like all of the events, were impacted by it. But I think this one in particular, because of the nature of the way that the Feeding San Diego local high school locations are run. They're run and managed by the students at the high school. They serve an incredibly shocking, underserved community, and they do it through a logistical process that I don't think anybody could possibly fathom. And taking food that is potentially in the process of not going to use and getting it to these families that are in need.
Jeff Smith is the president of the Mesa Foundation. I find it interesting. I don't necessarily feel it locally, but you must have felt it along this way. Like there's this stigma at times with NIL, right? This idea that, oh my gosh, do they everyone's getting hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars. But then I see the way that you've run this collective, you and the staff and San Diego State men's and women's basketball and all these nonprofit ventures and working with our community. And yes, NIL is a part of it. Like it's a competitive landscape. This is college athletics. How have you balanced, working with the community, but also the understanding that for San Diego State to be competitive in men's and women's basketball, it takes resources and dollars?
Well, that last part is really the impetus for starting it. But the way that we decided to form it and focus along the way is by changing the lives of these young men and women that are lucky enough to play basketball at San Diego State, not just with their basketball experience, but through the process of understanding what it's like to connect with the community that loves them and embraces them, and the feeling of giving back. It's life-changing. We have athletes that have since graduated that we communicate with, that were part of our first couple of years at Mesa, who when we see them and they're back on campus, they talk about what an impact it had on them to have that understanding of what their involvement with organizations like Feeding San Diego, San Diego Blood Bank, USMC Pendleton, all of the different organizations, Fight for ALS, to find a cure for ALS. And there's so many different things that we've been able to connect with. And we really wanted this to be a complement to the community and team-oriented program that this culture that's been developed here at San Diego State. It's really unique, and we're just doing our best to make something good out of something that really was a necessity, like you said, competitively in this new college era.
Jeff Smith with us from the Mesa Foundation. So let's talk about Mesa and San Diego State men's basketball moving forward. We all saw firsthand the impact of the Players Era Festival, the way the Aztecs played on floor, winning 2 of 3 games, finishing in 3rd place in the event. Some great results, helping out potentially for the overall resume. What is the impact, do you feel? And you never really know, but in terms of retaining and then, of course, adding to a roster, because there's changes each and every year, the Players Era Festival and the dollars that commands for Mesa Foundation, do you have a feel for what type of impact that could have moving forward?
Well, it's all cumulative towards an end goal, which is to keep this program where it is nationally. And no doubt it's a huge infusion. We're grateful for the opportunity to be in the first ever version of Players Era. We are scheduled to compete in that certainly for the next couple of years, and we hope for long into the future. But all you have to do is talk to anybody that follows this space to understand that even with the Players Era, even with the growth that Mesa has experienced prior to playing in that tournament, and putting us in a place where every year we feel like we are close to the top of our conference from an NIL revenue standpoint. We find out some point during the year that we slid into a second, third, or fourth place, even in our own conference. And so, we've always been asked, what's the target? And it's frustrating, I think, for people to hear that there isn't a target. The target is for the community to take something that, we all probably, when it first started off, thought to ourselves, well, what is this? Why do we have as fans now have to slow down and make this decision to give money to a program? And the answer is abundantly clear, because when you don't, programs start to fail, players move on, they have opportunities to move on. And, look, these guys want to be here. You can't blame them. They're playing with, 67 degrees outside today. It's, December 27th. The program, I think, admittedly, to most people's surprise, is incredibly good and competitive again this year with a really young roster. We always put these kind of players together. For some miraculous reason, this coaching staff is great at what they do. We get these character guys that buy in on team. They want to be here. They want to be part of the community. They made the decision to give back some of their NIL money to Feeding San Diego because the community connection truly matters to them. They're different young men, and it is an important thing for them. We just have to come up with an ability here, an increasing ability to not give them a reason to leave. And I think it's that simple. They don't want to go, and we don't want them to go. But there's no question about it. If we don't continue to grow this, players' era dollars aside, if we don't continue to add members and add revenue to Mesa, we're going to lose players. And nobody wants to see that. No matter what we all say individually about NIL, as Aztec fans, we like them for a lot of reasons, but we sure like them because of how amazingly they perform on the court. And no matter what the coaches do, no matter what the court culture's been here for the last 25 plus years, if we don't grow Mesa and we don't grow NIL, it will change. And so I think it's our responsibility. And in my opinion, this is an amazing opportunity for the people who look at these young men as just basketball players to understand what kind of people they are.
Jeff Smith, well said. Mesa-Aztecs.org. You can become a member of Mesa, support San Diego State men's and women's basketball starting at just $20 a month. Mesa-Aztecs.org. There's always something in the pipeline, right? Like what's next? Again, members matter. I know you've worked with a lot of local businesses over the last couple of years as well. Is there more in the pipeline as we head towards 2025 and this upcoming March?
What we've just kind of struggled with the reality of growth. I think the newness of NIL, we got at this really early in kind of the first official year of NIL being a thing, in that amazing first year, 2022, 2023. And we've grown. We've doubled our size, both in terms of members and revenue every single year. And that's great. It's allowed for us. The story, I think, for a lot of people in the off season was who left, as opposed to who stayed.
Sure.
And as I said earlier in this call, John, these guys want to be here, and we did provide a very good reason for them to stay, in addition to all the reasons they decided to come here in the first place. And so what I would simply say is, this is an active decision. I've said it to you before. Anybody who's a fan of Aztec basketball, we make it as easy as we can, and along the way, as cool as we can for anyone who's a fan. You get these amazing opportunities to get to know the players, get to know the coaches, behind the scenes access, all sorts of things that could be meaningful for you as a fan. But at the end of the day, like you said, you're talking about at our lowest membership level, $20 a month. $20 a month, you're a member, you make an impact on this program staying where it is. And so I think the answer is, if we can continue to double every year, and right now we have about 1,500 members. There are 500,000 graduates from San Diego State, however many hundreds of thousands of non-Aztec alumni fans here in San Diego. Can you imagine all we need to do is double that number every year and what that would mean for our program? We would continue to be able to provide that complement. This team would stay where it needs to be and where it is right now. If anyone who's listening isn't a member, make a real easy decision to go onto that website and join, tell somebody else about it. We grow like that, and we do that every year. We're going to be okay. If we don't, and people decide not to listen because they think it's just okay, because that's what Aztec basketball has always been, it will change.
That's well said. Mesa-aztecs.org. Again, membership starting at $20 per month. And that really cool announcement today with San Diego State men's basketball. Every player giving back, giving a portion of their NIL to Feeding San Diego. Real quick, Jeff, before you go, what do you make of the team so far? 8-2, big wins. Couldn't really ask for more in the non-conference, right?
It's incredible. I mean, like I said, I think I'm an Aztec and I'm a fan, and I certainly went into Vegas hopeful that some good things would happen. I'm not going to, necessarily admit exactly what I thought might be the outcome, but what you saw out there were a group of players that had only been playing together since, ostensibly the middle part of the summer in practice, and not really had much in the way of game time experience come together. I think it speaks to certainly the coaches and the culture, as I said, but it also talks about, I think, some of the players that are here that have become real leaders, and some of the new players, Nick Boyd, Wayne McKinney, some of the guys that have come over that have become real leaders, the growth of the guys that we've had here since they've shown up, Miles Bird and BJ Davis, and everyone was so excited to finally see Magoon get out there and do his thing. It is incredible. And, as I said before, one of the things that is really enjoyable is having had the opportunity to get to know guys like Jared Coleman-Jones. It's just one of the nicest human beings you've ever met. Get to know him through this Mesa process like anybody will if they decide to join, and then watching these guys sell it out. I mean, put 100% into it on the floor in such a short period of time. It's amazing. So I'm gonna keep the fingers crossed. I'm excited for what the future holds. I think it's only gonna get better from here. These guys are proving what they got, and they're proving their commitment as Aztecs.
Jeff, always appreciate the time. Great seeing you and Wendy and Caroline from Mesa, the folks at Feeding San Diego State's men's basketball team and coaching staff. It was a great announcement earlier today, again, with the donations to Feeding San Diego, and we'll see you at VA House tomorrow. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right, Jeff Smith from the Mesa Foundation. Special guests in studio next. You heard from them. They'll join us next. Stay with us. KGB Sky Show. Let's get to what really matters. Big Rich, TD, and Fletch in the studio. What's up, guys?
Thank you.
Big night tonight.
Huge night.
Holiday Bowl, KGB Sky Show.
Yep. Syracuse, Washington State. DirecTV Holiday Bowl, followed by the 1015 KGB Sky Show. We're pumped up. We're fired up. Look to the sky, San Diego. It is going to be the largest fireworks display in the world, John.
In the history of time.
So what are you guys doing tonight? You're not setting off the fireworks literally, are you?
We had to get our pyrotechnics licensing.
Fletch is on top of Snapdragon Stadium.
Missing. The reason why he's got his hands in his pockets is because he's missing several fingers.
Right.
We had a small accident, but listen, that's
I thought that was Jason Pierre-Paul.
Off a lot of fireworks tonight.
Fletch is going to go Tom Cruise style at the Olympics. He's going to zip line down to the middle of the field,
except naked.
And then Rich and myself and Cat Fisher will be there waiting for him to come down. His glorious naked body will descend down to the field where there is a giant wooden box with a plunger in it and a wire that goes to where the fireworks are set.
Before then, though, he's going to land on a white horse and he's going to ride it bareback. We'll hold the reins just like Beyonce.
Yeah.
And we're going to walk into the
Just
plunger
like
box.
Beyonce. Yeah, I love that. Wait, has this been a little bit? I feel like you guys are already a little like, well, you're always like this. This is Big Rich, TD, and Flesh. You can hear them in the mornings on 1015 KGB.
I know where you're going with this, John.
Is this one of those like it's the longest day ever and you've been up since like 4 a.m. and you're going to be up until like midnight and you're just going?
I'm glad you asked.
We haven't started drinking yet.
Okay.
That's coming within the next 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
We were in the parade,
which
this
I
morning,
love.
the Holiday Bowl parade. Yeah, I mean, we've been there. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So many people are out there. We're driving the 1015 KGB van. Me and TD were doing that, and so we're doing donuts in the parade. We didn't get yelled at. We did almost hit people. That's fine because it almost works in parade talk.
That's correct.
You only get in trouble apparently if you actually clip someone.
And it turns out, John, we are really good at being in parades. I mean,
I
we
can
are
see
good.
that.
At
You
it.
guys are the parade types, right? Like when I, think
I wasn't
about
invited.
That is,
you weren't invited?
No.
that is the kindest way
Right?
I've ever been insulted in my
you're
life.
like parade types.
You know what? You two, you're
You
like
look like
parade,
parade guys.
people.
You don't
Yeah.
have to talk to anybody. You just wave.
Well, so what are you doing during the game?
John, where's Lazy Butt?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
All right,
That's Jim, by the way, is
Yeah.
Lazy Butt.
We
who
don't know where
knows?
he is.
He'll
We
be
never
back
know
at
where
some
he is.
point. What do you do now during the game? What's the plan? Maybe eat, maybe drink, maybe like what's the plan during the game?
Couple of cocktails and dinner before the game. Get to the stadium, get to Snapdragon Stadium, home of the Aztecs.
Yep.
So much fun football played there this season. Looking forward to next season, but a great capper to the football playing season over there. Watch the game, take in all the festivities, shake some hands, kiss some babies. I don't know how many babies are going to be there. I'm going to kiss them all.
We're probably going to sign some autographs because our mugs are all over the big screen throughout the game.
See, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Are we going to see some Big Rich, TD, and Fletch?
On the
we're gonna see
Jumbotron,
some
baby.
Okay.
Yeah,
now I'm excited.
Rich and John, for sure you saw this. TD, you did not. I don't know his first or his last name. I just know his nickname. But did you guys see who the Aztecs just signed? He's 6'5". 380 pounds.
You tweet about him.
His name is
the
the
Big
Yeti.
Yeah,
The
Yeah.
Yeti coming to the Mesa. That's a big boy.
Big boy. Look, they need help in the trenches. That's going to be obviously a focus of this offseason. Sean Lewis mentioned it several times down the stretch of the season, but also now as we enter the offseason. I'm excited to see what happens this upcoming season.
Me too. What's interesting about the bowl season, Rich, like when you were playing, it's like, well, you just got ready for your bowl game.
Yeah.
Now it's like Washington State changes their head coach, 30 players leave. It's like the whole thing, the timing of the portal, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Like the timing of the portal impacts bowl season.
It does. Well, and what's interesting about it, to your point, when I was playing football from 2004 through 2008 in college, I mean, I got in trouble one time because a relative bought me a sandwich. Like they were like, you need to talk to our compliance officer because the NCAA frowns upon people buying you meals. And now it's like these guys are walking away from college millionaires. So it's completely
It's not like
different.
any scandals took place at Penn State during that time frame.
No, not when Rich was
What
there.
are you even talking about? I don't even know what you're talking.
No.
Everyone was super compliant.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is when it comes to NCAA transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, the way things are going now, I mean, everybody's expecting Syracuse to win by a landslide tonight. Who knows? Because you have no idea how talented the depth of these rosters are either. Like the Cougars could have some, kind of unpolished gems on their roster. We just have no idea.
Last year, Caleb Williams didn't play, and Miller Moss emerged and threw for like five touchdowns.
Six touchdowns.
Yeah,
Thank
he
you.
broke the Holiday Bowl record.
That's right.
Or tied it. Yeah.
So you kind of never know. All right, so Big Rich, TD, and Fletch out at Snapdragon Stadium. First ever Holiday Bowl in Mission Valley at Snapdragon Stadium.
Correct.
There's still tickets available.
I was going to say, tickets are available at holidaybowl.com or make your way to Snapdragon Stadium. Amazing KGB Sky Show coming up tonight.
Love it.
It's going to blow
You guys are somehow on air on KGB. Now the fireworks show is if I'm on 1015.
Yeah.
It's like timed perfectly to the show, right?
Buddy, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so we knock our delay down completely.
Nice.
And so as you're listening to 1015 KGB, the fireworks are going to be perfectly synchronized.
All right, so
John, the first ever synced up firework radio show was on 1015 KGB.
Ever?
The first Sky Show.
Yeah, that's
When
right.
was that?
That is correct.
1976 on Fiesta Island. That was synced up to music. That was the first time a fireworks show has ever been synced up to music. It literally stopped traffic on the 8 freeway.
The more you know.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll see you guys at Snapdragon Stadium. Big Rich, TD, and Fletch. Weekday mornings on 1015 KGB. Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network will join us next on Jon and Jim.
This report is sponsored by Mattress Firm. The Holiday Bowl is tonight at Snapdragon Stadium when Syracuse takes on Washington State. Kickoff for that one is set for 5 p.m. In other bowl news, Navy defeated Oklahoma today in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl 21-20 when they had a defensive stop on a 2-point conversion with 6 seconds left that would have won the game for Oklahoma. And in NBA news, the struggling Kings fired their head coach Mike Brown today. The Kings are mirrored in a 5-game losing streak, their longest since 2022. They entered today with a 13-18 record on the season. And don't forget, the Aztecs are back at it tomorrow afternoon at Viejas Arena when they host Utah State. Our pregame coverage starts right here at 2 o'clock, and Uncle Teddy will have the tip shortly after 3. Score some deep discounts and deeper sleep during Mattress Firm's semi-annual sale and clearance. Take up to 60% off select mattresses and more. Plus, get a free adjustable base on qualifying purchases. Shop today for free and fast delivery. Restrictions apply.
Birth, what would you expect they would need to do in the...
It's Jon and Jim to warm up that drive home.
Mark Ziegler at the UT. For San Diego State to have a chance to earn an at-large berth, what would you expect they would need to do in the league?
Now, entering the league, given their metrics, took a big jump from the Cal game. I think right now, as we speak, they're in the tournament, no doubt about that. I'm not sure any other team in the league can say that because they either don't have a marquee win or they have a bad loss or two.
Now, time for Jon and Jim.
All right, San Diego, Southern California, what's going on? This is Hour 3, Jon and Jim. We'll get into some breaking baseball news coming up later this hour. Teoscar Hernandez back to the Dodgers on a 3-year deal. So we'll get into that, but it's also the second to last weekend of the regular season in the NFL. It's always our pleasure to welcome back Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network to Jon and Jim here on San Diego Sports 760. So, Cynthia, thank you for hopping on and hope you had a great Christmas and holiday season so far.
Same to you. I meant to look it up right before we got on here, but I saw you making someone mad on the internet, and it was pretty funny. But
I'm curious. I wonder what it was. Honestly, Cynthia, I don't know how much time it was baseball related.
I think it was baseball. It wasn't football. I know that was like,
all right, well,
it was like you were hilarious. That was very funny.
Okay, well, so 15 minutes ago, Jeff Passan from ESPN, who's a great insider, gets basically everything right. Tweets, the Dodgers are a machine. They can do no wrong. Other teams could put their money where their mouth is. And I quote tweeted and said, but when the Padres did this, I was told it wasn't good for baseball because there's this dynamic in baseball. It's like the large markets can do no wrong and they can spend all the money, but the small markets, have to be able to live within their means. It's like so anti-football. Nobody ever talks about the Packers like, oh, they're in Wisconsin. It's a small town. Can they really afford Jordan Love? It's a completely different sport. And honestly,
wild, right?
Honestly, the NFL, I feel like the NFL, and again, you've covered the NFL for your career. Maybe we're biased in saying this. I just think they have it right. Like, isn't there something to be said for everyone spending a comparable amount on their rosters to go through a year? That just seemingly makes sense.
I think that parity is what makes the sport so good, right? Like, you think in every season, the way we're going to feel about the Giants could be completely different than the way we feel about them right now. And all it would take would be, drafting the right quarterback, basically. So, everything can change in a minute. It feels a little more hopeful. It feels a little more, I don't know. It feels a little bit like things can change easily. And then when you get a dynasty, it feels better when you beat them. It's like David and Goliath, but not like this big money situation. It's like, oh no, they've done a really good strategy job. Like that's how the Chiefs have been so dominant. But when you strategize against them, sometimes you win.
Yeah, and it's like just to continue on that point for a moment. It's like in baseball when you say the city Pittsburgh or Kansas City, everyone's like, small market. In football, you say Steelers, Chiefs, you're like proud, prominent, massive organizations, tens of millions of viewers. Like, well, hold on, it's the same city,
right?
But it's a different sport. It's like you would never say Packers, Steelers, small markets, and nobody would ever say that. It's interesting. How at Baltimore, the Ravens, actually, I wanted to start there. It's like, I'm watching Baltimore right now. They're playing incredible football. Lamar Jackson's doing things that nobody's doing in football. Now, again, maybe it's fool's gold. We've seen them play well in regular seasons before. I think he's 2-5 in the postseason as a quarterback. Is it different this year or not? It's going to be tough with Buffalo and Kansas City, but is it different or not with Baltimore?
I think the thing that's different this season is something we're seeing in the wrinkles and folds that they're adding to each one of their offensive plays. Like, we're seeing different stuff. Like, at this point in the season, if you watch a Bills game over, you can see a lot of the same plays being run over and over again. And there's some merit to say, like, okay, we're not showing people the added things in our playbook. Well, the Ravens, because they had 3 different offensive linemen to start the season, it's like a completely different playbook than we were seeing ahead of the season. They're running, like, even if just the alignment, right? If they're out of the shotgun versus under center, that's different. And I think that is actually a benefit, because it feels like they're kind of getting better and being more multiple at the time in the season when things matter more. And of course, their defense is playing significantly better. So I think they're getting there. I'm an analytics person. So, like, the word momentum to me is like, that's like a psychology term, not like a sports term. But I think that the versatility in their playbook is hitting its stride right at the right time.
Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. I agree with you. With us right now on Jon and Jim, but there are, again, like, significant, you look at a Kansas City or a Buffalo, like, there's real headwinds, obviously, for Baltimore, even with the way they're playing. What did you make of the way Kansas City played in Pittsburgh on Christmas?
I think we haven't seen the best of the Chiefs either this season, which is a wild thing to say considering their record. But, they're getting pieces back that they haven't had all season. Hollywood Brown having basically, quote unquote, preseason against the Steelers is bananas. Yeah. And the opportunity now, we just saw Travis Kelce start to be more Travis Kelce-like in terms of being the subject of targets and not just like a decoy for a Noah Gray situation. But, it's really interesting to see if Joe Thuney can really hold up playing left tackle, and the man has played center, he's played left guard, all over the place. If he can truly hold up, then I think that we haven't even seen what this team can do yet.
I'm curious.
Wild. It's a wild thing to say.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, like you said, 15-1. Nobody's ever won 3 straight Super Bowls. They're already the top seed in the AFC. They're staying home. They're getting healthier. Like, until someone beats them, I mean, it's hard to imagine that someone's going to get them. But, crazier things have obviously happened in sports. We've seen the Giants beat the undefeated Patriots and so on and so forth. I'm curious to get your thoughts on, like, I look at what's going on right now in the NFC, and I see, like, the Vikings and the Packers are vying potentially, for a 5 seed in the NFC. And in college football, like, everyone always talks about, oh, the records are this, like, should they be in, they be out? Do you think the system is right? Division winners are 1 through 4. Division winners host playoff games. Even if a team, I guess there's a scenario where, like, the Vikings could be like 15-2 and a 5 seed, or the Packers, whatever, could be 13-4 and be a 6 seed. Does the NFL have it right with their playoff format?
I mean, I feel like it feels righter. Like, it's never going to be 100%, but I don't think you have such a, you can never account for every scenario when you're making a rule. You just can't. So, I think that the opportunity to get it more right is better in the NFL, because even though every once in a while the NFC South will sneak in with some nasty little schedule, but okay, that still means, and especially now that there's only one team that gets the bye, I do think that makes it even more fair, because then you don't have some strange, like, disparity between, like, like some, 2, 8, and 9 teams, and then, like, I don't know, then the 12 and whatever teams they can just get, both of teams get by. So I feel like it's righter. It's just, I've accepted the fact that none of this is ever going to be perfect. So it's the best you can do. And I think it is a very fair format overall.
Yeah, it's hard to be perfect in truly any of the sports when it comes to, like, a postseason format. Right. Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network, with us right now on Jon and Jim. Well, who's the bigger threat in the NFC out of the Vikings and Packers heading into this weekend?
I've looked at a lot of different things going on with both teams, a lot of different metrics. And the one thing that's, like, a little disturbing for me in this matchup for the Vikings is the fact that they're now allowing their quarterback to get pressured more often, getting pressured more directly, so face on, as opposed to, like, edging someone out where they can kind of get past it, or they have a real chance to throw an incompletion, on purpose, as opposed to taking a sack. But now they're getting like unblocked pressure. Sam Darnold it's just not the same sort of pass stopping, even in the pass protection of TJ Hawkinson's back. That's great. But like Aaron Jones hasn't been pass protecting as well as he was kind of beginning of the season. So that's the opposite scenario that the Packers find themselves in, where Josh Jacobs has become even more and more impactful. Like basically since week 8 is when he's had all his production. So, I think they're just kind of little minute things trending in the opposite direction. And I think those details are going to matter in this matchup. And when I'm looking at it, I just have a hard time. I can see either team winning. I don't think it's going to be by any means like, I don't think this is going to be a blowout, but I do have the Packers upsetting the Vikings in this scenario because of those little tiny differences in terms of how the offense has been performing and how the defense has been performing and the protections for the quarterback.
Well, first matchup was a great game. Again, they'll meet this Sunday, round 2 in the division. This is a two-part question. Do you think Saquon Barkley breaks the record? He needs 268 rush yards to pass Eric Dickerson. And can you imagine, I know it's not this weekend, but can you imagine him doing it against the New York Giants in the regular season finale for the Eagles?
There's part of me that's like, I can't imagine it not happening because you get a chance to like stick it to your former team. Yep. There's no love lost between the Eagles and Giants. Like these things narrative wise are pretty great. But then you see something like you look across the division and you see how many players are on IR for the Lions. And you're like, what matters more? Do you want to get this guy's individual record or do you want to get him a Super Bowl ring? And I just can't imagine after kind of knowing Saquon Barkley's personality, I think the thing he'd want way more is the Super Bowl ring and the team win. So while I kind of hope they give it to him this weekend, like with Kenny Pickett, might as well, right? Just run the air out of the football. But I could see it going either way. I just don't know. Look, I love a good petty moment as much as the next person, but I don't know if I think that's the smartest thing. I think just like keep it healthy, get yourself into a situation where, because especially if they're not playing for any positioning, which is possible given the time they play and what could have happened already. Who knows, man? I say stay healthy and try for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, what matters more? You're going to hang up picture of Saquon Barkley.
They hate New York, so
yeah, that's true. Both things matter. Truthfully, both things I think matter. Any reason for concern this weekend or Monday night for the Lions? They kind of need a win to keep themselves in position for a top seed. They're a small favorite, just a 3.5-point favorite at San Francisco. What's your level of concern on the Lions on Monday night?
It's never a good feeling when, I'm looking at this injury report that just came out today, and Terrion Arnold is now on it with an illness, right? So not that I don't think he'll sit just because they don't have anyone else playing. And, at some point you're like, well, we have no one else, so we're going to need you to go. But I think that it's never a situation where, I think Dan Campbell, even though it's not the same Niners team that beat you and that come from behind win last year in the NFC Championship game, you talk about a coach who's really good at using narratives to inspire players. I think that is Dan Campbell's specialty. And I think kind of the grit that embodies, the journey for Jared Goff and Detroit as a city, et cetera. I think that they're able to get up, especially for this one. I just think that the narrative wins out here. But I don't think anything's coming easy to these Lions. They're, this is not an easy season for them. This is not a good way to finish. It's going to be tough, but I'm looking at the Niners injury report and it's pretty darn bad too.
It's the Detroit Lions. It's never going to be easy. At the end of the day, they are they are the Detroit. There's certain franchises across all sports where it's just never as easy as some of the other teams. Lions are in that category. Certainly the Cleveland Browns would be in that category as well. Yeah. Cynthia, we appreciate all your time throughout the course of the season. We'll catch up next week heading into the final week of the regular season. It'll be 2025, but Happy New Year to you. And thank you for all your time here in San Diego. And we'll do it again next week.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Happy New Year and enjoy getting into your fights on Twitter. I love it.
I really should. Social media is the absolute worst. If we didn't do what we did, I don't even think I would use it. I wouldn't either, but it's also pretty funny. It can be funny. It can be funny. It can be fun.
Casual observer of yours, I think it's pretty funny.
There we go. I appreciate that. Thanks again, Cynthia. All right. Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network brought to you by Hamul Casino. 7 restaurants, thrilling games, and a sports pub voted San Diego's best. Hamul Casino is fun above all else. Teoscar Hernandez back to the Dodgers. It's being hailed by Jeff Passett as great for baseball. We'll discuss coming up next. If you missed our conversation with Matt Park, voice of the Orange, you'll hear that coming up in about 10 minutes. Holiday Bowl is going to get underway in about 45 minutes from Snapdragon Stadium. The breaking baseball news we haven't yet gotten to. So with Victor, Steve, Fletch in the studio, then we caught up with Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. It's from Jeff Passan. It should come as a huge surprise, although it is a significant move. Teoscar Hernandez was a huge piece of the Dodgers World Series run. He's heading back to the Dodgers, 3 years, $66 million. The deal includes a fourth-year option for $15 million, a little more than $23 million in deferred money, surprise, LA deferrals, and a $23 million signing bonus. Now, Jeff Passan went on to write this. I have no issue with the Hernandez to the Dodgers move. I don't have an issue with it. If the Dodgers had the best offer and it was $66 million, the deferrals are what they are, whatever. At this point, I mean, they've deferred $1 billion. So what's another $23 billion? I do have an issue when I hear this from those that cover the sport, considering what we heard about Peter Seidler when he attempted to do some similar things. This is Jeff Passan within the last 30 minutes. He writes, the Dodgers are a machine. Not only do they print cash, their willingness to spend it in pursuit of winning is unmatched. They put their money where their mouth is. Others could benefit greatly from the same approach. They choose not to. Yet when the Padres for multiple years under Peter Seidler were a top 2 or 3 spender in the game, the question always centered around viability, sustainability. Can it be done in a quote-unquote mid or small size market? But in Los Angeles, who cares? They should do it until they're blue in the face. With the Mets, they have Steve Cohen. Who cares, right? $700 million for Juan Soto. With the Dodgers, let them spend $700 million for Shohei Ohtani. But gosh forbid the Baltimore Orioles try to do it, or the San Diego Padres. Get in line, Padres. Get in line. I just don't understand that line of thinking. That's right into the script and narrative that baseball wants you to sell, that every team could do it. But that's not true, because every team doesn't have $200 million in TV money coming in every year. The Padres are getting nothing by and large. Zip, zero, zilch. And TV, the Dodgers have a multi-billion-dollar TV deal that will pay them over multiple years. They're not getting billions a year, but they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars per year. So the Dodgers have this absurd advantage going in. And the rich really do get richer in some of these, some of these signings. Like, only so many teams can sign Juan Soto. Would we all agree on that? Only so many teams can sign Shohei Ohtani. Padres, again, have tried. They've sold out the $300 million deals to Machado and Tatis and Bogarts, and rich deals to Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove. Like, they've done everything in their power to keep up with the Joneses. And every time they do it, they're told, pipe down over there. You can't do it this way. This way of spending and thinking is reserved for, quote unquote, big markets. But like, when Jeff Passan writes other teams could benefit from this strategy, like, this is hook, line, sinker, the narrative Major League Baseball wants you to convey. It's not true. In the NFL, the Packers can spend like the New York Giants. In Major League Baseball, the Brewers can't spend like the New York Mets. It literally isn't possible. Yet you've got the largest media members that cover the sport selling this narrative that isn't accurate. It's not possible. Other teams don't have the means to dish out $400, $500, $600, $700 million contracts. Yet when the teams like the Dodgers and the Mets do it, we're led to believe that other teams should do it. But then when the other teams do try to do it, we're told it's not sustainable or viable. Doesn't make any sense.
It's just baseball talking out of both sides of their, to where it's just, if it's the Dodgers or the Yankees want to do that, they're totally cool with it. But, if Tampa or Cincinnati or somebody else wants to do that, then they're going to go, no, you guys, you can't defer money. Even, if they don't try to defer Ohtani amounts of money. You think if the Reds signed, I don't know, just somebody, and they were like, oh, okay, but we're going to defer $100 million of his contract, and we're only going to pay him $30 million for whatever he gets. Manfred would be like, no, you can't do that. You guys don't sell enough Skyline chili for you to do that. So no. and he would shut it down quicker than, the Chris Paul trade got shut down to the Lakers.
It's just so much hypocrisy. Like, again, if the Packers spend, I don't even care. If Jordan Love gets the richest deal in NFL history, nobody says it's not sustainable, can't be done in Wisconsin, let alone Green Bay, Wisconsin, because there's parameters in place that basically put all of the teams within the same salary threshold. Yeah, there's things you can do, but say NBA, again, are there workarounds? Absolutely. Is it perfect? Of course it isn't. But in Major League Baseball, it is crazy, the disparity in spend. And then people tell me, well, the Dodgers, they have the revenues to support it. And then when the Padres try to do the exact same thing, people make it out to be a negative when the Padres try to do it, but a positive when the Dodgers do it. Like, if nothing else, the Padres and similar teams should be rewarded for attempting to spend with any type of the same prowess as the big spenders, like the New York Yankees, the Mets, and the Dodgers. They should almost be rewarded for that level of spend. But for whatever reason, it's seen as a negative when it should be seen as a positive. Otherwise, you're just going to have 2 or 3 teams run away from the other teams and spend. That doesn't mean they're going to win every single World Series, but they're running away from everyone else in their spending power.
What I would like to see is, let's get a handful of, these smaller market owners, and let's call their bluff. Try and sign somebody and try and defer money and wait for Jeff Passan to come and heap a praise on you and, just write some huge paragraph about how great it is for baseball and how great it is for small market teams to show that they can compete with other teams. And, they're not going to do that, but, try it and call their bluff. So then when they shut it down and go, no, you can't defer that money, go, well, why the Dodgers did it, and then just wait and see all the excuses pile out of their mouths.
Yeah, I just think it's so short-sighted to be like, they're a machine. They print cash. Their pursuit of winning is unmatched. Other teams should put money where their mouth is. The money that the Dodgers have in television, the Cincinnati Reds don't. The San Diego Padres don't. Like, it's a completely different world. And are we really celebrating teams that have more TV revenue than others? It just, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. We can get back to it. Plus, on the other side, if you missed our conversation with Matt Park, the longtime voice of the Orange, he'll get us ready for tonight's Holiday Bowl coming up in about 30 or 35 minutes from Snapdragon Stadium, Syracuse and Washington State. Matt Park, voice of the Orange, here next on Jon and Jim.
State at Viejas Arena. Our pregame coverage will start at 2 o'clock. Uncle Teddy will have the tips shortly after 3 o'clock. The Holiday Bowl is tonight at Snapdragon Stadium when Syracuse takes on Washington State. The kickoff is in about 30 minutes. In other bowl news, Navy defeated Oklahoma in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl today, 21-20. And in NBA news, the Kings fired head coach Mike Brown today. They entered today with a 13-18 record on the season. Tired of wanting hot showers but getting freezing instead? Let Anderson PHA help. They'll solve any of your water heater needs and throw in a water pressure regulator valued at $1,300 for free. Visit AndersonPHA.com.